Let me say hello to all of the people who are on this webinar. Let me also say hello to all of the people who are um, uh, attending by recording because you're in a different time zone or you had other things that you had to do. One way or another, I appreciate you being here. This is going to be a departure for me, and it's going to be a bit of a difficult session for me. And I want to go carefully because we're talking about a topic that even in normal times is a very hot button topic, and that's the issue of race. On top of that, these are not normal times, and so people are very edgy, and that edginess comes out in a lot of different ways. As I said earlier, that we're doing this in webinar format, so I'm going to talk for a while, and then at the end of my presentation, I'm going to invite questions, comments, thoughts from the folks who are here listening right now. And therefore I'm asking everyone to keep their screens blank while that is happening. I want to apologize in advance for some of the language I'm going to be using tonight. This is language that I don't normally use. I will be using it to illustrate my points. I'm not using the language as a way of condoning or advocating the language at all. And therefore, I want to say that for those of you who are on the script who have been with me before, you know this is true for me. For those who have not been with me before, take my word for it, this is true for me. I am as one of the things I've said before is, and this is for people who are coming on the screen online now, we're doing this webinar format, so keep your screens off and your audio off until we get to the end of the hour, and then we're turning everything on and getting our questions at that point. A couple more points before we really get started here. Number one is because I am looking at the totality of our behavior, not the totality of this group or that group. I have been critical of the behavior of white people and the behavior of a white community. I've also been critical of the behavior of Black people in a Black community, and I've had pushback over the decades that I've been doing this. And one of the pushback places is that I'm excusing racist behavior. Nothing that you will hear me say tonight is going to excuse in any way behavior that could be called racist, oppressive, demeaning, degrading, violent, etc. That is not in my world, and I don't want it in my world, and I don't want anybody doing it in my world. And therefore, I'm not excusing or condoning or explaining anybody's behavior, not Black people's or white people's, etc. I'm not condoning any negative behavior. Last point before we get launched in here, and that is, I usually, this video is going out to everyone who has signed up for it, and the last time I checked, we had about 105 people signed up for it. I am going to ask you to be careful in how you share the video with others. Please don't put it on your social medias yet. I want to, at some point, I want to get there, but not right now. Because of the things I'll be saying, it will be really easy for someone to take my words out of context and to create this little sound bite that makes it sound like I'm saying something that in the full sweep of things I'm not. So therefore, if you want to share this with a couple of friends, okay. If you want to put it on Facebook, that is not okay. If you want to share it wider than a couple of friends, contact me and I will, and we'll talk about it. I said that was going to be my last point, but this is really my last point. If you write things in the chat box, I'm not going to read them. And the reason is, in order to read them, I got to put my glasses on, and then you're getting my reflection from the lenses. And so when we get to the point where we're asking questions and making comments, ask your question. Don't put it in the chat box. I read everything that's in the chat box, but I do that after the event, not during the event. Okay, so let's get started. And I want to get started with a quote that I put in my first book, The Power of One: Authentic Leadership in Turbulent Times. And this is a quote from Martin Luther King. And he said, "When our days become dreary with low hovering clouds, and our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, we will know that we are living in the creative turmoil of a genuine civilization struggling to be born." I think that, he said those words, 40 years ago, but I think those words are even more true today. We're seeing all around us, and we're seeing, especially in my city right now, in Portland, Oregon, outside my windows, we're seeing the struggles of a genuine civilization. But those struggles are not, we're in the struggling period right now. We need to find out which way we are going. I call this the George Floyd moment because his murder in so many different ways encapsulated the things that are wrong with the society, and in some very interesting ways can encapsulate the moment that we need to get to that genuine civilization. The problem is we're not doing it. That moment is being wasted in shallow proposals, shallow theater, anger for anger's sake, not trying to get to a point, not trying to get to a place, but anger for just for the sake of anger. We have to be able to identify the real problem. And in order to do that, I want to share with you my slides. Hang on. And so, like I said, Black lives must matter to Black people first. That if we're going to create a world that works for all means all. All doesn't mean the group I'm comfortable with. All doesn't mean people who are not incorporated into society from historical oppression. All means everybody. All actually means all beings, not just human beings. And so in this, we need to look at our world differently. We've seen the pictures of the icebergs. And for those of you who were in my webinar yesterday, you've seen this picture before. And we know that the majority of the iceberg is under the waterline. And that that 9/10 under the waterline can be the most dangerous part of the iceberg. And I'm going to ask folks to mute themselves. Thank you. So that can be the most dangerous part of the iceberg. Now, one of the things that when we look at the iceberg, we can look at it as a metaphor for how we know things. The part that you see, which can be huge, is what we actually know. Other parts of it that are less visible are the things that some people might know, but everybody needs to know. But it's that part that's under the waterline that is the part that that you really, really need to know. And it's the part that many of us don't know. So we can look at, for example, the George Floyd killing as the visible tip of the iceberg. We can look at the yellow arrow as being what a lot of people understand as racism. And racism is alive and well and continually destructive in our society. I'll say that again. Racism is alive and well and continually destructive in our society. The problem is that ain't the problem. The part that we really ought to know is that what we call racism and all of our other isms, sexism, homophobia, ageism, the classism, all of that are symptoms. These are the ice cubes off the iceberg. We will never change the society until we get down below the waterline and we start looking at things from a very, very different perspective. Okay, so the question is, how do we address the things that we see below the waterline? How do we address the larger part of the iceberg? How do we begin the process of addressing what's truly wrong with our society? What we're talking about now is an interesting intersection of race, class, and historical oppression. Any one of those things by themselves is difficult to deal with. When you combine them, it gets very interesting. We can't begin to end racism without a total transformation of our society. If you're trying to do that, if you're saying, oh, well, we'll get police to stop doing chokeholds and everything will be better from then. If you believe that, you're not paying attention. You're not paying attention to the totality of the problem that we've got. And therefore, you can't pay attention to the totality of the solution that we need. So when we look at this intersection between race and class and historical oppression, we look at the intersection between my internal oppression, the way I oppress myself, and my external oppression, the way that others may oppress me. That if we look at it, we begin to see that these are mirror images of each other. Each one of these things, the internal oppression and the external oppression, support each other. If one or the other goes away, the support stops. So what we have to do is start looking at how do we make both of these forces go away. So I came across a story. It's actually in one of the books behind me, but I can't remember the author's name. And the author was talking about that she had a small fishbowl. And she had two goldfish that were swimming around in the fishbowl. And she decided that she needed to do a thorough cleaning of the fishbowl. And she had no place to put the fish while they were swimming around. And so she put about 6-8 inches of water in her bathtub, and she dumped the goldfish in the bathtub. And while the fish were in the bathtub, they continued to swim these tiny circles around each other, even though their horizons were unlimited, or relatively unlimited only by the size of the bathtub. They continued in this to swirl around each other because they did not understand that their walls were no longer there. They continued to make the wall there. For many of us, back in the 60s, this was a time of great liberation. This was a time that we were taking the walls down. This was a time when we started breaking the patterns. Now, that's true for some of us. It's not true for some others of us. And if we're going to talk about making progress in a society now, we've got to make that true for all of us. We've got to make it true for all Black people. We also have to make it true for all white people. When I tell you that I do work with getting people who are exhibiting racist behavior to stop doing it, and I've told a lot of you over time some of these very dramatic changes that that have been accomplished in these common way consultancies. I find it really interesting that nobody asks me how I do it. Nobody says, "Wow, let me get a pencil, a piece of paper. I'm going to write this down. I want to take notes. I want to be able to do this myself." What people say is, "Oh, I wish you well on your work," and I want to say, "Why do you think that's my work?" Okay. The way that I approach this is based on how I myself changed over time. When in the 60s, I was definitely a child of the 60s, and was very much influenced by the Black Power movement, and had all the language and had the Afro out to here. I'll have to dig up my my pictures from that time so you can believe that yes, I was skinny, and yes, I had a big Afro. But there's an event that took place 65, 66, somewhere in there, that still sets with me. And I want to share that with you because sometimes one word is enough to trigger a transformation. So Stokely Carmichael was speaking up in Newark, New Jersey, and I wanted to hear him. And so Stokely Carmichael had just written the book Black Power. I mean, he's the one that named our movement. And so I got a busload of people to go up to Newark, and we were all sitting up in the balcony of this old theater. And if you've never heard Stokely Carmichael speak, you probably need to go to a YouTube video and listen. He was an amazingly dynamic speaker, and everybody in the place was rocking with him, preach, brother. And at one point in time, he says, "We are fighting for our humanity." And everybody's, "Yeah, that's true." And then he says in a quieter voice, in a much more thoughtful voice, almost as though he's saying it to himself, he said, "We are fighting for our nobility." And he got less yay, but then he kind of keeps going. But I'm not going with him. I'm stuck back on what he said. We're fighting for our nobility. What does that mean? What does it mean for us to be noble people? Not just okay people, not just good people, but what does it mean for us to be noble people? And when I think back to those times, to the birthing or the emergence of this Black Power movement, I looked at how we referred to each other. We called each other brothers and sisters. Hey, sister, how's it going? Hey, brother, how's it going? We referred to ourselves as kings and queens. This is around the same time that people started using the phrase, Black is beautiful. Started using the phrase, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. I'm a beautiful person. I'm a proud person. Remembering Dr. King talking about with the garbage workers strike, holding up these big signs saying, I am a man. Okay, this is a statement of being. The sign was for the world at large, but the sign was really for each one of the people carrying the sign. I remember the times as an explosion of culture. I remember the time that the music I was hearing was conveying the complex emotions that we teenagers were having at the time. And the thing that I really remember is the leadership we had at the time. Even though we could watch our leaders struggling and sometimes fighting with each other, we knew that these were people that were standing for a vision, a way of looking at the world, a way of being in the world. So whether you were in Martin Luther King's camp, and at the time I was not, and I'm glad to say that it took me a while, but I woke up. At the time, whether you were in Malcolm X's camp, which at the time that's where I was, or Stokely Carmichael or Huey Newton or Eldridge Cleaver or any of the cultural revolutionaries, regardless of whose camp you were in, you had some choices because our leadership was able to articulate the visions that we were holding. Now, we get to present day, where way too many Black people refer to themselves as dogs, as niggers, as whores, as bitches, as refer to their children this way, refer to their parents this way. This ultimate disrespect, this ultimate dissatisfaction with who and what we are. This way of relating to each other through the absolute common, the lowest possible common denominator. You're a dog. Hey dog, what's happening? Well, actually the answer is always nothing. I was here in Portland some years ago, and at some public event where somebody was selling tickets for something or another, and I had more than enough tickets. And I saw these two young black guys coming toward me. And I said, you know, I've got some extra tickets. You want the tickets? And one of them says, hey, nigga, that's great. And I stopped him and I said, I'm not a nigger. And I said, neither are you. I said, I respect myself, and so should you. And this guy paused. And I mean, he thought for a few seconds and he looked at me and he says, no, I'm a nigger. I'm I don't feel that about myself. And that really bothered me. And the reason it bothered me was because all that we were doing back in the early 60s was wasted at that point. Where here's someone who didn't know, he wasn't even born during the 60s, and had gotten to a point where the idea of us being brothers was meaningless. Now, when he walks in the world, he is walking in a way that is demeaning to his own spirit. Now, on an energy level, everybody can see it. And when people interact with him, they interact with him in a negative way. When people interact with me, they don't. When they interact with Oprah Winfrey, they don't. It's not because she has money. I don't have any of that money. It's because we hold ourselves a completely different way. And what we need to be doing is looking at the behavior of the police as they are interacting with a community, and the behavior of the community as they are interacting with the police. This is a two-way street. The use of the word nigger is always to demean. The use of the word is always demeaning. If someone is saying, oh, this is how I refer to my friends, well, you are demeaning your friends. If you're saying, oh, this is something I use in my song lyrics, you're demeaning the people who are listening to it. How does a person treat the other, whoever the other is? And I know a number of you have been in my webinar on engaging the other. But how you treat the other is determined by how you are willing to treat yourself. Almost all the work that I do with whites, and this is almost always white males, almost always blue collar, and almost always I've been called in because their behavior has been acting up. And when I'm in there, what I am doing is self-esteem work for white males, because I can't ask them to treat other people better than they treat themselves. I can't ask them to see other people better than they see themselves. So in certain circumstances, the word nigger is not acceptable, but you can write the word poor white trash in the New York Times and nobody objects to it. You can demean other human beings and, oh, it's okay. And I am against any and all demeaning behavior, regardless of the perpetrator. I had a consultancy, and I'll go ahead. This is with Portland's Home Forward, the public housing agency here. And they called me in because there was demeaning and degrading behavior to some of the Black people who were in one of their public housing projects. They wanted my help in dealing with the behavior. The people there were being teased and ridiculed because of the color of their skin. And they were being teased and ridiculed by other Black people. So these were African immigrants who had come into who had gotten public housing. And the other Black people in that area, the African Americans in that area, were teasing them and calling them names because their skin was dark. The behavior that we have to change goes beyond anything that you can put into a label called anti-racism. That's the top part of the iceberg. When you start getting below the waterline, these behaviors start blending together. And they start blending together in some amazingly destructive ways that no one is willing to talk about. I was saying this to a group of people some decades ago. I've been doing this for a while. I was saying this to a group of people, and a white person in the group said, kind of under his breath, "You're really letting white people off easy." And I got angry. And I said, you're really letting white people off the hook. And I said, what makes you think you are on the hook? What makes you think the world revolves around you? So for the past few hundred years, the world revolved around, oh, I'm so great. Oh, I'm so great. And right now, the world revolves around, oh, I'm so bad. I'm so bad. Maybe all of us need to change. And maybe all of us can help each other to make that change. We have a bit of a leadership problem. Leadership has to mean more than I get airtime on CNN. Leadership has to be more than I can make a really interesting quip about the president. Leadership has to be more than complaining about the problem. Leadership, true leadership, has to be visionary. You have to be able to articulate the vision that you want us to follow, you want us to sacrifice for, you want us to eventually be willing to die for. If you don't embody that, not just talk about it, but if you don't embody it, you are not going to be effective in creating the kinds of transformation that we need in this society. We need to be able to talk to all communities. We need to be able to talk from the point of view of the reality that all of us are experiencing. And I would say that reality has to extend not just to where we are in this society, but literally around the world. If I am holding myself that way, if I literally just hold myself that way, others will change around me. If I'm not holding myself that way, if I'm caught up in all of the emotions, the passions, the angers, then I'm not going to be available to be an effective change agent, an effective leader for our future. Okay, one of the things that those of you who know me, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the problem. I want to tell you what you can do about the problem. And I have a quote here that I would like to share with you. This is by someone named Tracy Mcmillan. Love yourself the way that you want someone else to love you. For a lot of us nowadays, we want everyone to love me better than I love myself. I can treat myself like garbage. I can treat myself like a dog. I can treat myself and everybody around me as though we were dogs. I can refer to my my loved ones as niggers, bitches, and whores, and then expect someone else to love me. Guess what, folks? It doesn't work that way. So I've been talking about the transformation of society for a very long time. Actually, the book that I read, The Power of One, Authentic Leadership in Turbulent Times, this book is 33 years old. I'm working right now for the second revised edition that I hope will last another 30 years. And the other, my main book, which is Creating a World That Works for All, this book is 20 years old. I've been saying this for a long time, that that we need to transform our society, not reform it, not punish people who are acting in accordance with what we've been expecting in our society. We need to change the expectations of the society. The transformation of society means the transformation of the Black community. The transformation of society means the transformation of the white community. The transformation of society means this transformation of all communities. And if we think that we can leave any community behind, if we think that it's okay for the members of that community to drill holes in our common lifeboat, thinking, oh, they're just on their end, they can drill holes all they want, it won't affect me, it won't affect us. If we believe that, we're going to get wet. But the transformation of that society means the transformation of the people who make up the society. And it's time for us to stop pretending who's in our society. We've got some absolutely amazing, wonderful people in each one of these societies, in the white community, in the Black community, in the Asian community, in all of our communities. And we also have people who demean themselves, demean others, and bring down the energy of the entire society. That has to change. Along with making all of the other changes that we need to make in the society, along with transforming the police department, along with transforming the political structure, along with transforming the economy, we also have to transform our hearts. So, what does Black Lives Matter actually mean? That's a good question. I've heard a number of different answers to that question. There was a leader of the Black Lives Matter movement, and this was, I hate to say it this way, several killings ago. Okay, this was like a couple of years worth of killings ago. But this person was on NPR, and they said that the goal of Black Lives Matter is to keep agitating until the white policemen are killing people, killing whites at the same levels that they're killing Blacks. And I thought, what a terrible goal. What an unthought out vision. Is the goal to get a yard sign in every yard or a window sign in every window? What an empty goal. How about Black Lives Matter meaning the transformation of our entire society? And let's look at this with a little bit closer. I think that Black Lives Matter must mean that we reject all demeaning, degrading, and violent behavior, no matter who is perpetrating it, so that Black Lives Matter ends the violence of a relatively out of control police department to the Black community. Black Lives Matter also has to mean that the violence that happens inside of the community, everybody walking around with guns because you think that guns are cool. I used to walk around with a gun because I used to think that guns were cool. I woke up. Everybody else can wake up too. Once we get to the point that we reject, we identify, we reject, and we hold open the notion of peace and security for everyone inside and outside of the community, things can start to change. Things can start to happen. We need to see that we need to stop degrading, demeaning, and violent behavior, no matter who's perpetrating it. And we need to get people to see that this is part of their own self-degradation. So when I hear people using the N-word, I say, I would appreciate it if you don't use that around me. Yeah. And I tell them, that's because I love myself. I don't need to even hear that. Not because it's affecting you, because it affects me. I love myself too much to even listen to that. We need to let go of and reject or not be satisfied with shallow gestures and slogans. And that's basically all I've been seeing in the past weeks in the aftermath of the George Floyd killing. People shouting, "Take a knee." Okay, so in different parts of the country, the police have kneeled down for a couple of minutes and then get back up. What did that mean? What did it mean to them? What did it mean to their observers? Did it even change anything? People have been saying, say his name. And so they've been repeating the names of the people who have been killed through police brutality. Okay, you say his name. You then do what? What's the goal? What's the vision? We've heard calls for either defund the police or disband the police. About a week or so ago, there was I could hear my neighbors coming down the steps. They're in the lobby and they walked out the door. And when they walked out the door, a street person across the street came and attacked them. I mean, physically attacked them. They had to run back into our unit. Now, the people who are calling for the defunding of the police or the disbanding of the police, what's their solution for that? What's the solution that, I mean, we have over the course of the last 30 or 40 years asked the police to do an impossible job. We've asked the police to hold back the energy of societal transformation, and we've given them one tool to do it with, and that's a gun. Now, I've been calling for the longest time for the transformation of police departments, and defunding the police doesn't get there. All that does is get everybody who doesn't understand the issue upset. disbanding the police in favor of what? But let me talk about what Black Lives Matter has to mean. It has to mean that I'm willing to go deep. And it has to mean I'm willing to go deep in loving myself. And I need to be able to go deep in encouraging all others to love themselves. To love themselves to more than the behaviors that they're demonstrating. To stop listening to demeaning sounds, I don't even justify that as music, to stop talking in ways that are demeaning, to stop demeaning your own body with drugs, with bad food, with all of the things that are part of the lifestyle of an impacted community. Going deep and loving oneself also means going deep and loving our society. We have to have a conversation around the nature of the society that we're living in. I haven't seen it. Given how huge the internet is, the conversation might be going on and nobody invited me to it. But I want to share with you something that Václav Havel said some years ago. Václav Havel was the former prisoner of the Soviet Union who became the president of the Czech Republic. He invited me a few times to come to Prague and work with him, first with Forum 2000 and then with the student version of Forum 2000. And one of the things he said was when he was a prisoner, and the only reason he was a prisoner was because he made a statement, and the statement was, "We can govern ourselves better than the Soviets can." And for that, they put him in prison. So while he's in prison, and his job was pushing the laundry carts around between the cells, he saw another political prisoner that he didn't even know was in the prison. And they had 10 minutes before the guards would make a move on to talk to each other. Now, for those 10 minutes, what did they talk about? Now, what we would talk about is how unfair it is that they're in prison, how brutal the guards are, how bad the food is, how much they miss their wives. But he said for 10 minutes in the middle of a Soviet prison, the two of them talked about the kind of society they were going to create when they got out. Now, Havel was taken out of the prison, dusted off, they put a suit on him and made him the president of the country. The other guy, they took him out of the prison, dusted him off, put a suit on him, and he became the foreign secretary. Now, we are in this amazingly strange prison right now. We're in a very different kind of prison. We don't see the bars because the bars are up here. The bars are in our hearts. The bars are in our minds. The bars are invisible in the reality, but they're just as powerful as if they were iron bars in front of us. The bars are our social media, our traditional media, all the things that keep us talking in the same circles that don't get us anywhere. So what we need to be doing, what we have to be doing, is looking deeper, to be able to look at our own society in such a way that we can take the great parts of it and enhance them, and take the not so great parts of them and do away with them, to move away from that. Now, I've been doing this, a program for the past several years that's called Releasing the Shadow, Embracing the Light. And the goal of that program is to actually get down into the energy that keeps all this stuff going, that gets down into the energy that keeps, that when the young man that I was talking to on the street, that keeps him locked in self-degradation. Once you start to help another human being elevate their consciousness, there's no stopping. Just as there's no ceiling, there's also no floor. You can just kind of keep going down and down and down and keep going down. So what would happen if we had a program of releasing the shadow, embracing the light in every possible intersection of our society? Not just people who can afford to pay for it, but people who really need to hear it. People who have been impacted by the system in some way. People who are in detention school. People who are in juvenile detention facilities. People who are in prisons. People who are locked in the prison of a dead-end job. People who are locked in the prison of dead-end drug abuse. What would happen if we started unlocking those doors? Now, one of the things I want us to realize, and this is true not just for Black people, this is true for all people. Just because you have money does not mean that your life is not impoverished. If you want an example of that, just look at the President of the United States. This is a man who's in poverty and has billions of dollars at his disposal. That's an entire country at his disposal. And it doesn't make him any happier. When you look at his face, this is the person who is experiencing spiritual starvation. Once we set about that we are going to be curing spiritual starvation, and again, for those of you who don't know me, when I say the word spirit, I am not talking about religion. I'm not talking against religion, but I'm talking way beyond religion. Once we set our goal that we are going to be fulfilled, I'm going to be fulfilled with good food, which means I can stop eating the crap that I've been eating, and my health goes up. Okay, I can stop being a person who's keeping my own health down. If I start being emotionally fulfilled, I can stop flitting from one meaningless sexual encounter to the next meaningless sexual encounter. I can start recognizing that I can be not only filled, but I can start acting like a father to my children. I can start acting like a loving husband to my spouse. I can start acting like a good son to his father and mother. I can start acting like a responsible citizen in our society. And guess what? The incident of police violence will go straight through the floor. If I can be fulfilled inside and be fulfilled in meaningful work, which 90% of the jobs in this society are not. I mean, even those of you who have jobs, have well-paying jobs, it's meaningless work. But what happens if our job, if the thing that we're in, that we're getting paid to do is uplifting for me, uplifting for the job itself, and uplifting for the entire society? We have the ability to do all these things, but we have to make the decision to do them. Folks, I could keep going like this for a long time. I didn't tell you half the stories that came out of my experiences in Camden, New Jersey. But I want to leave you with, I'm deciding between my two books here, which one I want to leave a quote for. And I'll do this out of The Power of One again. And this is from the conclusion. New times and new issues call for a new direction. A few brave souls may venture a protest. There's nothing I can do about the Middle East or pollution or why the price of everything is so high. I'm just one person. What power does one person have to change the world? The answer is easy. The power of compassion. When military might has rusted, when temporal fame has vanished, when all worldly powers have come to an end, the true power of compassion can be felt. Great cities turn to dust. Beauty fades. The strong become weak and feeble, but the compassionate will truly inherit the earth. What can the compassionate do to correct our modern day problems? Everything. Compassion is the light which drives out the darkness. Fear, egotism, and arrogance causes us to ignore the pain and suffering of others. Learning compassion, that ultimately I am you, will provide the energy for the profound societal shift necessary for our salvation. What we're talking about is salvation. We're talking about the salvation of the individual's human spirit. We're talking about the salvation that will combine with all others to create a society the world has never, ever seen before. That's the task that we've got in front of us. And I'm willing to do my part. If each of us is willing to do our part, we will be in a new society. So thank you. And I'm now going to invite you to turn on your cameras. Keep your audio muted, please. I had to blank a couple of you, so if you have any trouble turning your camera on, type a message in the chat box and I'll turn it on for you, or with you, I'll say. But it looks like everybody is on, and I recognize quite a few. Some of us really need to hang out, and I guess that's Baji. If I'm going to ask you to start your video, and when you click on it, and there you go. So if you can raise your little blue digital hand, I will then be able to turn you on. And I'm just going, I see two blank spots here, and so I'm going to ask you to start your videos too. Okay. Questions, comments, thoughts. We will, I said I usually go about a half an hour with these. if we're in a great spot, I'm going to invite us to go a little longer. But we'll see how this goes. I see two hands. I'm gonna, Karen, you had your hand up first, and Baji, I will call on you in second. So Karen, can you unmute yourself, and what's going on for and with you right now?
Thank you, Shariff. It was brilliant and inspiring. Question that came up when you were talking about the goldfish example, and I'm always struck with, what do you do where people don't want to change? They're comfortable with the status quo.
Right.
Whether people stay in an abusive relationship or a job that they hate, but they don't, you know, it's that risk factor.
Right.
And then my other comment is when you were mentioning about the use of the word nigger and kind of how Black people talk to themselves that way. And I was struck by this when I was watching a Chris Rock comedy show, and he uses that word all the time. And I was honestly, I was offended that he was using it. And I'm thinking, if Blacks are calling themselves a nigger, how is a white person supposed to know that's not a term where it's an offensive term? So I guess the second part is just a comment on my part, but with the goldfish idea of how to work with people that don't want to change or like the status quo, even though in our minds it would be like, oh my gosh, this is so limiting to you. They don't want to, well, I shouldn't say don't, raise their consciousness anyway.
Those 2 points together, I could go at least 45 minutes, and I'm not. So those of you who know me, this is called discipline on my part. I'm going to try to do both of them in 5 minutes, okay? In terms of this, of the status quo, we can get really, really used to having little. We can get really, really used to having not enough. I have two responses. One is I let people be where they are. It's not my responsibility to save you, any of the yous out there. On the other hand, if a person's behavior has a negative effect on the society in general, they cannot and should not have the, let's call it, right to to do that behavior without consequences. So if a person, let's take a very simple example. So if a person wants to smoke cigarettes, don't do it around me. Don't do it in public areas where other people can be affected by it. And when you get sick, don't ask me to pay for it. In fact, I'm going to make you pay for it in advance. We're going to put the price of a cigarette to the point that you're going to be paying for your own health care. And maybe at this point you would understand that your negative behavior has consequences. The cheapest food in the Black community is the food that is the least nutritious and most harmful for your body. All the people who make money from that need to stop making money from it. If I just choose to eat, to take toxins into my system, that's up to you. But if you're doing that, you don't have the right to call on society and say, I'm sick now, cure me. So in a society that actually worked, you would have lots of opportunities through incentives to eat the right food, and disincentives to stop eating the right food, to stop eating bad food. A quick aside, and then I'll get to your second point. I was in the grocery store some years ago, and this woman, African American couple, it looked like father and adult daughter. Okay, and I probably just got out of the hospital. He still had the orange bracelet on where he had been hospitalized. And she's standing him in front of the case where the non-alcoholic beer is. And I can't hear the conversation, but she's got this look on her face like, this is the only kind of beer you can drink now. And he's looking like, I don't know if I'm buying this or not. And I was holding out the hope that she wins, okay? That his behavior has to change. Okay. Okay, well, let's get to your second point. The use of the N-word has become endemic in society. I think Chris Rock is a very talented comedian and artist, and I don't listen to him because of that. At some point you have to say, this is not acceptable, and say that behavior out loud. This is not something that we as a society will accept. And it's a habit. I had that habit. Okay, I say this one some years ago. I mean, back in the Black Power movement, cursing was mandatory. Okay, and a group of us were in a restaurant, and we were loud. We were teenagers, and we were loud talking, and it was MF this and N that, and just kind of going on. This white guy comes over and says, "Excuse me, but I'm here with my wife and my children," and he points to them. And he says, I just would appreciate it if you could keep it down some. And I launched into him. The first words of my mouth was, "You white motherfucker." Da, 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 da. I cursed so loud and so bad that this guy got his family and left the restaurant. And we were all high-fiving and, yeah, we got rid of him. Yeah. Anybody else? Now, while this was going on, while the whole exchange, while I'm getting patted on my back and everybody thinking I'm so cool, there's something right here at the heart level where I knew something was wrong. Fast forward 10 years, I'm in a restaurant with my wife at the time and my children at the time. And there's a table full of young Black guys, and they're running it down, and they're loud talking, and they're cursing. And my wife says, "You go over there and tell them to hold it down." And I struggled with it because I didn't know that I had the right to do that, since I was in the same boat myself. But if you knew my wife at the time, so I go over and I said, "Excuse me, I'm here with my wife and children," and I pointed to them. "I'd appreciate it if you could hold that down some." And they made me feel triply bad because they agreed immediately. "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, brother. We didn't mean anything to it." And they're waving to the kids, and I'm like, this is making. If there are 3 events in my life, if I had a time machine, if I could go back in time to that moment, I would take my words back. I would have taken back what I said to this guy that drove his family out. Okay, that was a very long 5 minutes. Baji, is that how I'll pronounce your name?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I am going to be facilitating a book club starting in a couple of weeks. This is for the Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta with David Alexander, Reverend David Alexander. And in fact, he was the one that introduced me to your writing. So the book, yes. So this is the book. There's going to be multiple groups going on. And right now I've got about 15, and I anticipate it might get up to 20 or even more.
Wait, 20 people or 20 groups?
20 people that will be
right.
enrolled.
Okay. Right.
And it will be a Zoom discussion.
Yeah.
I don't know how to start. What would you recommend as the most effective way? It will be a diverse group of people in terms of ethnicity. Age-wise, probably most over 40, between 40, 60, something like that.
Right. Baji, what I would like to do is, let's just take this conversation off channel. I'll give you my phone number. I'll give you my email. We will be able to talk about this and spend some time, because obviously this is important. You tell Reverend David I said hi, I guess another thing. Well, we'll talk about this offline. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. And I'm going to put my I don't know how to do this. I'm going to put my if any of others of you are in the same condition, same position, my email address is going in the box right now, and ta-da, you got it. From me to everyone. I like that. So, okay. So, other questions, other comments, other thoughts. I am seeing Terry's hand up, and I'm seeing Dinah's. Dinah, is that your hand moving there? Okay, so Terry first, and then Dinah. And unmute yourself, Terry.
I'm struggling with, well, we have the society that we want, where everyone is treating each other with dignity and respect, and having a time to listen to each other and reflect and support each other, witness what we are dealing with right now. And I'm living in a situation where I'm still doing my activism work, and I'll be having young people come in to the space I'm in from maybe out of prison or out off the streets or out of the community mental health situation. And I'm not going to know everything about everybody's situations or understand everybody's struggle at all. And I know some people will put my white skin, it's going to trigger them, just that, right? And I understand how that works. And so I've been building up that sense of residing in a safe place inside myself, and trying to work in this whole idea about building community so people can have a community response to things, and sticking with people through a process, because it feels like it's a process. And I guess because you know me a long time and you saw me where I was before when we used to be in Portland. And I think I'm in this place here. I'm not really sure how much to demand for myself in this process. And to think about how would anybody, human being, want to be dealing with this stuff together, right? So I'm just doing this right now. And I'm wondering, like, how do you deal with the nitty gritty in the situations of making that transformation happen in the field, you know, because that's where I'm at. So any suggestions?
Yeah. A few. So where are you? You're still up in Alaska? Okay. First of all, I think the things that you said early on, I think are very important. Stopping, listening, witnessing to others. Don't, you know, like not jumping in with knee-jerk responses, but really, how do you pull together the energies that you need to do, and how do you really hear each other? How do you actually spend the time, take the time to hear each other? You'll remember in Creating a World That Works for All, there are those 12 steps of inclusivity. I would, if you have, you know, if you have people who are just kind of coming new to all this, go through the 12 steps together, okay? And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, let me see if I can find them real quick. So this is something that that was developed. The 12 steps are in Creating a World That Works for All. And the 12 steps were developed by Sogyal Rinpoche for how to deal with dying people. But I adapted it for how to deal with the other, whoever your other may be. And it's things like the most essential thing in life is to establish an unafraid, heartfelt communication with others. The essential thing is to relax any tension in the atmosphere in whatever way comes most easily and naturally. Be yourself. And the last one is you cannot help the other until you have acknowledged how their fear disturbs you. Their fear disturbs you. My fear then disturbs them, okay? How their fear disturbs you and brings up the most uncomfortable fears. Working with the other is like facing a polished and fierce mirror of your own reality. I'm called into a room as a consultant to work with a room full of police officers. They're all carrying guns. Well, bullet guns, taser guns, they're strapped. A lot of them have bulletproof vests on. Now, each and every one of them in the room is afraid. And they're afraid of me. Now, if I don't see that, if I don't see their fear, I'll wind up making the fear worse. And that's all that we're doing right now. We are rattling each other's cages, okay? We're shaking the cage, and you know, we don't even know that we're doing it. Or in the case of President Trump, he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's doing it for an effect. Now, I can choose not to buy the effect. I can choose to say, you know, I know you're here to make me upset. I'm saying in my own mind, I know you're here to make me upset. I'm going to choose not to be upset and therefore de-escalate the situation. Okay. Tell you one story, and then Diane, I'm going to get to you. So I got, this is back in the early days, right after September 11th, where I was stopped trying to come into my own country every time I would leave the country. And I got taken into the little room, and this one, I've even forgot what city I was in, but they were playing good cop, bad cop, you know, so you're going to stay here forever. We know that you're doing something wrong. We know you're a terrorist. You had a terrorist name, so on and so forth. Then Mr. Good Cop comes in. Hey, and he's going to be my best friend. And hey, how's it going? You know, And Sharif said, well, what do your friends call you? I said, my friends call me, and again, this is part of being centered in who you are. I said, my friends call me Sharif, but you can call me sir. And the look on his face that this whole thing that I had going isn't, and he's like, well, sir, I was out in 10 minutes. So, and all of these things are designed to make you afraid. And it's your choice whether you go there or not. Okay, Dinah, if you can unmute yourself and if you can educate us here.
I just was going to comment on, meeting you and doing your work with the inclusivity in the world that works for all these 5 years, 6.
At least.
So it's a short time. I don't have all the stories you have, but I was just going to say, in seminary now is when you came, and this work, I began to just, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's like, just get in the boat and start rowing. So yeah. I just made up slides. I'm like, I don't know. Yep. I don't care what you do. You just got to get going. We got to get moving. Look at this country. I didn't wait. I didn't ask for permission. Well, I did have to go ask the dean, could I use the chapel for 3 nights to do authentic speak and have people come in and talk about race. But I've told you, I'm using your book, Practicing Inclusivity, wherever I can grab people together. I started with just some local churches, and then I went to, even did our whole regional, 70 ministers. But I find that I kind of have to preface it, though, when I'm speaking to, it's been largely white audiences. I don't speak for the whole Black race. It kind of gets a chuckle, but we're not linear. And even when I'm, pooling resources and taking in things, that I have to be careful not to take in a singular voice or a singular source of information. I am now tapping into different authors, different people, different groups, educational groups, theological seminary, theological groups, civic groups, so that I'm not insular and only getting my information from like one place or one source. So I just, I'm still on the path. I'm still doing the work, but I just feel like, you have a lot in there trying to see what I can get tonight. But if I would tailor that to me, I can't take this one and go out on the street with it yet. Before Black lives are going to matter, they have to matter to Black people first. That specifically, there are many healing groups for Black African Americans, healing and reconciliation groups, post-traumatic stress syndrome, all kind of groups to heal what is causing, there's cause, just, some people just can't, just stop that behavior. They can't.
That's right.
There's been a lot of generational healing and things that have to go on. So it's a lot of work there. It's all these different buckets of work that have to be done. So it's just, I'm just trying to, it's hard to paint a broad stroke over the whole thing, but it takes time, and we just have to keep going. It takes time. But to the other sister, just get in the boat, call Sharif, and start doing your seminars. Start doing your studies.
Indeed. Let me respond to a bit of that. First of all, you mentioned practicing inclusivity. This is a workbook that doesn't work unless you work it. Okay, when people will buy Practicing Inclusivity, and I'll hear a week or so later, this isn't really all that deep. This isn't particularly meaningful. couple people have asked for their money back, and I'm like, okay. I said, I want you to do the first exercise. Don't think about it in your head. Actually write, if it calls on you to write something down, write it down and show me the writing. And once you've written it down and once you've shown me the writing, if you still want your money back, I'll give you your money back. And what I hear back a week later is, oh my God. It's like, once you do the work, you get to see how deep the work actually goes, okay? Second thing is not speaking for the entire race. And if I can, and Dinah, you probably know this already, but I'm going to share my screen and share something with you that I call majority-minority dynamics. A lot of the dynamics we talk about in terms of being racism is really majorityism. So and I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. If you send me an email asking for this, I'll be glad to give. Actually, it's going to be on the recording now that I've put it up here. So minorities tend to believe that they're being punished for speaking up and expressing themselves, which actually contributes to a cultural powerlessness. Minorities believe that they're not allowed to speak for themselves or their views are not important. They believe that they're not allowed to have power, that every single act of violence and oppression toward any minority group member is known by the entire minority community. Minorities believe that they're politically and socially marginalized, unseen and unheard, and they only feel secure with members of their own identity group. This creates a number of cultures, and the cultures are negative. The culture of powerlessness, the culture of victimization, the culture of invisibility, the culture of isolation. Now, there's some parallel beliefs in the majority community. So majorities, people who are in the majority, will look at themselves and they have a right to speak up and a right to express themselves. They believe that they speak for all people and that their view is held by all others. They believe that they create the term normal. I'm normal and everybody else is deviant from that position. That they believe that it's their role, their right, and their responsibility to impose order. And that one is behind most of the violence that we see in seeing the police perpetrating. It doesn't matter whether or not, to them, it doesn't matter whether or not George Floyd committed a crime. What mattered was that he was not under their control. How many times have you seen Black people in police custody face down in the dirt? They make them get all the way face down and hands cuffed behind their backs. Now, I want you to think of the number of white people you've seen face down in the dirt. I have never seen it, okay? And so this is not a matter of securing this person. This is a matter of diminishing their personhood. So the bad actions of the individual minority group members are seen by the majority as typical. Bad actions of majority group members are not typical. The majority supports other members of the majority. The majority doesn't understand minority issues even when you tell them. They have no interest in actually incorporating the understanding. Tell you a quick example of that. I was on a board of directors for an organization, and there were a number of other folks on the board. And at a given point in time, as all boards do, a legal question would come up. And so so one of the board members would say, I would I would give my legal opinion, and the board member would immediately say, well, we need to consult with a lawyer and see what a lawyer says. And I would say, I am a lawyer. And the person would have a confused look on his face, say, oh, you're a lawyer? I said, yes, I'm a lawyer. And then we go on from there. Next month we meet again, and a legal question comes up. And I'd say, well, we probably need to do this, that. And this person would say again, we need to consult a lawyer. And I would say, I am a lawyer. And they would say, you're a lawyer? And third time this happened, and I pulled them aside. I didn't have a need to embarrass them in a group. I said, why is it that you can't remember that I'm a lawyer? Is it because I don't wear a tie, or is it because I'm Black? And he turns all sorts of different interesting colors of red. And the next month that it came up, a legal question came up. Before I could get any words out of my mouth, well, Shariff is a lawyer. He can answer this for us. And so yeah, this failure to understand the issue, you have to start from the premise. Do you want to understand? Okay. Now, all of these things together give the culture of superiority, the culture of self-empowerment, the culture of isolation, of deep identity. All these things continue to contribute to how I am going to see the world. Okay. I am recognizing that there's a V for victory or peace sign coming up from Rich's corner here. And so if you can unmute yourself, that would be good. And hi.
Hey, Shariff. It's great to see you again. It's been a long time.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've retired from full-time ministry.
Okay, well, there you go. That explains a lot.
It does explain a lot. And then I had some surgery on my shoulder, and I'm just getting back into what's my next step. And you know, I facilitated practicing inclusivity and embracing or releasing the shadow, embracing the light. And you know, it's such a huge thing. The whole thing, when I reached a point, I think, where I felt like I just do what I can do and reach the people that I can reach, and I had a kind of a group, you know, at the church and all that. So I really appreciate tonight, because I was going through my emails and I'm like, God, you know, what's next? And this whole thing is it's the way I feel, believe you know that. And so I'm just been trying to kind of figure a few things out. And so it's about time to dig out all those materials and all those
That's what I've been doing
and
for the past month or so, is going back into my Shadow to Light files and going back into my practicing inclusivity modules. And it's like, we need it now. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I moved about 20 boxes, but I think I left your stuff on top. So.
Okay, there you go.
There you go. So I just want to, thanks for the inspiration tonight. And one thing that you said really struck me, that I think is important for everybody to understand, and I'll be repeating it, is that, you know, we've asked the police to do an impossible job.
Yep.
And that is to transform our society with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing the best that they can, whoever they are, however they screw up. You know, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt, including our illustrious leader. And so I think it's really important to keep a perspective for everybody, and try to, well, not alienate anybody in the process, which is really easy to do, because people are polarized in a lot of ways. And, you know, when you got a congregation and you got, this guy's Republican, this guy's Democrat, this guy feels this way so strongly, this guy feels this way so strongly, and they look at things and they just see things differently, then it's important to, see things differently with them, but come to this understanding that it's still all up to us. And so I'm still trying to figure out, where do I fit in after all these years?
Yep.
So thank you for
Yeah.
tonight.
Listen, me too. if y'all could read my journals, yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what is mine to do here. And I want to share something with you from what you just said, and that is the polarization of the society. The polarization has taken place to the point that we can't hear each other anymore. We don't even try to hear each other anymore. What we do is we're kind of like blasting air at each other. We think that it's really that social discourse is calling people names and unfriending them. And the problem, the real problem is that if we've got the things that make the divide even worse than it is that all of these things are a function of asking the wrong questions. If I walk into any group of people, I can ask any of the so-called hot button issues and instantly divide the room. Okay. Are you for or against gay marriage? Well, some people are going to be on the other side, some people on that side. It's going to be a fractured room. If I ask the right question, everybody comes together in how can we best do this thing that we hold in common. If I ask people, everybody who likes drinking clean water, stand over here. Everybody who wants to give their children toxic, dirty, disgusting, nasty water, go over here. By asking the right question, you achieve unanimity. You achieve at least the common ground. Now, in the next question is, in whose interest is it not to ask that question? In whose interest is it for us to have each other at each other's throats? In whose interest is it that for us to not see eye to eye with each other? Once we start answering those questions, we can start identifying who the real potential leaders of society are, and then who the charlatans are on all sides. Okay, this is not my side is correct and your side is dog meat. Okay, this is everybody's contributing to the problem. Everybody is contributing to the problem, and everybody has the potential to contribute to the solution. Okay, folks, I'm not seeing, oh, I see another hand. Okay, Brian, this may be, I think this will be the last question unless somebody else has a burning one. Also, I'm not seeing any blue hands or meat hands waving around. So Brian, you get the last question or comment.
Oh boy, great.
No pressure. Make it a good one. Okay, no pressure though.
So this is kind of a specific ask, and it's a perfect lead-in from your last comment. For those of us that are trying to really lean into the polarization and find that common denominator, I have been so, every day I remember the quote you gave, if we would just look upon everyone we encounter as our brother and sister, would we not treat them just a little bit differently? That has just so hung with me. So here's my question. When you try to go into that, I don't want to say peacemaking, because that just means settling. I mean, but really creating that harmony, you feel like you take blows from all sides. What do you do, and what do you encourage others to do to kind of keep their tires pumped? You know, to stay encouraged, to stay in this. Because sometimes, I mean, you know, at least in your tribe, you've got your tribe at your back and you're only worrying about the darts and the arrows from the other tribe. When you're really trying to reconcile and share, you know, show folks what is in our shared common interest, sometimes you get the darts and arrows from everywhere. And again, and to be honest, there is always a temptation sometimes after the tough days to just crawl in your cave and not come out. So I just kind of throw that out there and you know, wonder what you might say.
Let me say a couple of things. Very, very good for a last question. Yeah. The first level is I've got to put myself in a position where I'm not either not taking the blow, not affected by the blow, or not deeply affected by the blow. Okay. I have to do this work in myself first. How many times have you heard me say this? Okay. I've got to do the work in my own heart, in my own being first. So the game plan is that we're going to get Shadowed to Light revved up again for the fall, and in a very different kind of way. I'll more on that later. But I've got to release my own shadows first. I've got to welcome in the light to me first. That then means I can be non-reactive to the people who may be trying to land blows on me. I was thinking about this example. One of my things of exercise is I walk to my post office box and back every day. And it's about a half-hour round trip. And I try to walk faster than a normal walk. I'm going to get some exercise here. I walk by one of the public housing high-rises in doing that. And there's a guy that was outside, and I've seen some people there who are like the regulars, and you know, kind of wave, and they kind of wave, and that's it. But this was a white guy, and he was very loud talking to himself, and very negative language, not racial, but just a lot of cursing. And I kind of thought, no, this is kind of stinking up the neighborhood here, but that's okay. And I went to the post office and came back, and his repertoire had changed. And it was all racially abusive language. And he's looking at me. And this is, I've gotten my heart to the point where I can be non-reactive to that language. I mean, so as I'm walking toward him, my thought was, I need to help this guy out, because if he said this, what he's saying to me, to the wrong person, there would be blood on the sidewalk, okay? And I was thinking, should I call the manager? Should I call the police to kind of get him to calm down? I mean, it's clear he is mentally not present, okay? but it's also clear that he has enough language to be mentally present enough to try to be pushing my buttons. Okay. So when I got within like, the other thing is like, do I cross the street away from him, or do I keep coming? And this is, again, I had enough time to think about this. If I keep coming, this could be seen as a threat by him. If I cross the street, this could be a sign of weakness that has him continue the behavior. He may come across the street after me. So I kept walking toward him, and he immediately kind of turns around and goes in the building. So I didn't have to call the manager. I didn't have to call the police. But I was absolutely clear the only reason I would call the manager, or only reason I would call the police, is to help him. Okay. That I could be non-reactive and non-responsive to him. And so you've got to do that work inside. And when you do get reactive, and when you do find yourself triggered, you have to own it. You have to say, right now, what you just said triggered me, okay? Now, and it made me feel small, it made me feel insignificant, it hurt my feelings, kind of whatever went on for you, you've got to own it, because it's how we actually, all of our emotions and all of our vibrations are out there in the world anyway. So let's own them, and let's actually have them as teaching opportunities. And so I think that responds how I deal with this. But then I've been doing this in a lot of different circumstances, with lots and lots. When I walk into the room, I know I'm going to be getting a half ton of hostility, of people really don't want me to be there. And if I need you to like me, I'm going to be in trouble, and one of the things that happens when people are in that situation is that they attack back. If I start attacking people in the room, I'm going to be in trouble, and so my ability to take that step back and this was a hard one, again, to recognize that people are afraid of me. Now, I think I'm a nice guy. I tell jokes. I'm non-reactive. Okay, and how are you going to be? How are you going to be afraid of me? I can tell like half a dozen stories just came up. I'll tell none of them. Okay. I think we've gone long enough here. I can, as you know, those of you who know me know I can go for a while. I have appreciated working with you tonight. This has been, as I said, it's very, this is a very important conversation that can be miscast and misconstrued very, very quickly. I'm going to try to get the video to you as soon as I can. I will, hopefully that'll be by tomorrow. And what I will invite us to do right now is to turn on our audio so we can all say goodbye to each other. Anything else? Okay, no, I'm not asking if there's anything else. There's nothing else. So thank you. I appreciate your time and your attention. I look forward to the next time we get together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste, y'all. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So see you.
Peace.
Au revoir.
Okay.
Stay.